Mother-in-law walked into the house and stumbled on a scene she wished she'd never witnessed. Her son was lashing out at his pregnant wife. Robert's mother, Patricia Johnson, never thought she'd be dragged back into the nightmare she had once managed to escape. But one morning, when she showed up at her son's home without warning, she froze right in the doorway of his bedroom. There was Robert, her only child, towering over his wife Emily, who was expecting their first baby. His fists were tight, his face twisted with fury. Emily lay curled on the floor, clutching her belly as if her arms could shield her unborn child, whispering for it all to stop. In that instant, Patricia's entire world collapsed. The boy she had raised was repeating the same violent cycle his father had once unleashed on her. And the choice she made in that moment wouldn't just determine Emily's future, it would alter the course of their whole family's lives. What happened next will simply shock you. Before we continue, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support keeps these stories alive, and it means everything to us. Now, let's get started. Emily Johnson had learned the art of moving quietly. She tugged her sleeve down just a little at a time, the way someone might hide a stain on a white shirt. She had practiced this for years, slow, deliberate motions. When the cuff brushed against her wrist, she winced ever so slightly, then flattened her palm on the counter to stop her hand from shaking. The kettle hissed behind her, releasing a thin ribbon of lemon-scented steam. It smelled clean, almost like the air itself was trying to wash away the mess of her life. The house looked perfect in the morning light, the marble island polished, a nursery catalog spread open to a page of soft green paint samples. In the corner, the ultrasound photo rested like a secret she only dared to cherish when she was alone. She let her fingers rest gently on the image before pulling them back, startled by the sound of footsteps overhead. A floorboard creaked. Silence pressed down. Emily counted her breaths, slow and steady, the way a diver measures oxygen in deep water. Every Thursday at 10 o'clock sharp, Patricia arrived, always with a bouquet that somehow matched the color of her coat. That morning was no different. The chauffeur's black sedan pulled up right on time. Patricia stepped out with her back straight, sunglasses low on her nose. She was a woman who had long ago learned that money could soften the look of a room but could never erase the shadows of the past. As she walked toward the door, two neighbors standing nearby paused their chatter. One leaned toward the other and whispered under the breeze, "She looks tired again." The other shrugged. "Maybe it's just the pregnancy." Their voices faded the moment the front gate clicked shut. Inside, Emily smoothed down her apron, gave herself a quick glance in the mirror, and tilted her chin to test a smile that didn't pull too much at the bruise near her hairline. She had brushed on peach concealer and prayed the light would be kind. When she opened the door, sunlight spilled across the foyer, catching the white lilies Patricia held. Emily stepped back carefully, one hand on the doorframe to keep her balance. "Morning," Patricia said gently, her voice warm but edged with caution. She slipped off her sunglasses and took in every little detail, the way Emily lowered herself onto the ottoman, how carefully she crossed one ankle over the other, and the nervous glance she cast up the stairs as though sound itself might stir something dangerous. Patricia placed the lilies on the entry table, straightening a crooked frame as she did, small acts of order to calm an old, rising ache. In the kitchen, Emily poured the tea with both hands gripping the pot to steady it. She nudged a trivet half an inch, breathed slowly through her ribs, and let the lemon steam sting her eyes. "I slipped yesterday," she whispered, not daring to meet Patricia's eyes. "In the bathroom, on the mat." The word sounded rehearsed, like a polished excuse carried in her pocket for moments like these. Patricia heard the explanation and felt the weight of her own past pressing on her throat. Memories came rushing back, the sting of lipstick spread over a split lip, tugging sleeves down on summer days, laughter that cracked and broke the second a door latch clicked at night. She watched Emily clutch the teacup like it was fragile glass, her gaze drifting to the nursery catalog, the green paint swatches, the ultrasound tucked neatly in the corner. Hope laid out carefully, as if begging for permission to exist. Upstairs, a phone vibrated against wood. Then silence. The house seemed to hold its breath. Patricia reached for the lilies and noticed a faint brown smear on one of the petals, dirt from the florist's bucket. Ordinary, stubborn, unwilling to rub away. Something inside her hardened. She had ignored the signs once before. She wouldn't ignore them this time. Outside, a delivery driver leaned toward the concierge at the gate. The delivery driver glanced at the house and tilted his chin toward the tall windows. "That family?" he asked. The concierge let out a long breath. "Big place, quiet windows." He paused, then added under his breath, "Too quiet." Inside, Emily tugged her sleeve down just a little further and forced out, "I'm fine," as though repeating it often enough could somehow turn it into the truth. Patricia didn't argue. She just studied her daughter-in-law carefully, taking in every detail until the air itself felt heavier, charged with an honesty neither of them wanted to name. It was the kind of tension that lingered like the metallic taste of a storm before lightning struck. She set the flowers on the table, lining the stems neatly, and let silence do the talking for both of them. Something here was not an accident. That Thursday, Patricia stayed longer than usual. She wandered slowly from room to room, her fingertips brushing across polished countertops, her eyes lingering on the framed photographs. In every picture, Robert smiled broadly, confident and self-assured. But when Patricia looked closer, Emily's smile was thinner, stretched just a little too tight. Emily carried her growing belly like armor, her hand always resting protectively near her unborn child. In the living room, the sunlight slanted across the rug, catching golden threads. Emily fussed with the cushions, arranging them with a nervous precision, as if the house demanded perfection from her. Every small movement gave her away, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, how her eyes flicked toward the staircase at the faintest sound. Patricia's chest tightened. She remembered being that woman once, years ago, trapped in a marriage where bruises were dressed up as discipline. She used to hide the marks beneath silk sleeves, laugh too loudly at dinner parties, tell friends she was clumsy just so they wouldn't press further. Now she saw those same shadows trailing Emily, the same weight she had once carried. That evening, when Patricia prepared to leave, her driver loaded the lilies into the car. She overheard the concierge murmuring to him quietly, not realizing she was near. "She covers for him, doesn't she? The wife. Everyone knows." The driver didn't respond, just raised his brows and pressed his lips shut. But Patricia had already heard enough to confirm the unease that had been eating at her. The following week, she returned with a casserole dish tucked under her arm. Emily greeted her with another one of those careful, practiced smiles. This time Patricia caught sight of the faint outline of purple bruising at the base of Emily's neck, barely hidden by a turtleneck, on a warm day, no less. "You should take it easy," Patricia said gently, her eyes fixed on the mark. "I slipped in the shower," Emily answered, repeating the same polished excuse like a pebble smoothed from being turned over and over in her hands. Patricia didn't press. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, and let the silence expand between them. Emily turned away, her shoulders stiff. The kettle hissed again, filling the kitchen with steam. Inside her head, Patricia argued with herself. "He's your son. He can't be like his father. He was supposed to be different." But another voice rose up, sharper, older, reminding her, "You swore, if you ever saw this again, you would not stay silent." Days blurred into weeks. Each visit added more weight to Patricia's suspicions. Every lie Emily told stacked on the last like a house of cards ready to collapse. Each glance, each flinch, each bruise hidden under fabric made Patricia feel history repeating itself, her son carrying forward his father's cruelty like an inheritance no one had asked for. By the next Thursday, Patricia had made up her mind. She would no longer call ahead before visiting. She needed to see the truth without warning, without rehearsed smiles. That morning, she told her driver, "No schedule today. Just take me straight to the house." The air inside the car felt heavy, charged with a kind of anticipation that settled in her chest. She stared out the window as familiar streets blurred past, her nails tapping against her clutch, a nervous habit she thought she had outgrown years ago. If I'm wrong, she thought, I'll be relieved. But if I'm right, God help us all. When they pulled up, the Johnson home stood silent under a gray morning sky. No gardener outside, no music spilling through the windows, just a stillness that felt off. Patricia told her driver to wait. Her heels clicked against the stone path as she approached the door, and for a moment she hesitated, haunted by the memory of all those nights she had dreaded unlocking her own. The door wasn't locked. Patricia turned the handle slowly and stepped inside. The air felt thick, almost metallic, carrying that faint edge of fear you only recognized if you'd lived with it before. Upstairs, a dull thud echoed, followed by a broken sob. Her breath hitched. She froze on the marble floor, her hand still gripping the doorknob. Another thud. A cry. Then her son's voice, harsh, low, dripping with venom. Get up. Stop pretending. Patricia's legs trembled as she climbed the stairs, each step deliberate, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. The sounds layered themselves over old memories, her husband's shouting, the crash of glass, her younger self curled up in a corner. She had never imagined her son would inherit that same darkness. At the end of the hallway, the master bedroom door hung slightly open. She pushed it wider, and what she saw stopped her cold. Emily lay crumpled on the floor, arms wrapped around her stomach, her face drained of color. And standing over her, shoe lifted, was Robert, her only child, rage carved into his features. The sight was grotesque, like watching her late husband's ghost wearing her son's skin. Robert, she whispered, her voice trembling. He turned, startled, eyes wide. Mom, it's not. But the excuse fell dead in the air. The truth was already written in the room, Emily's swollen belly, her trembling hands shielding the life inside, the dark bruise spreading across her cheek. Patricia's throat tightened. For one suspended moment, her entire past and present overlapped, the girl she once was, the man who had broken her, and now her son carrying the cycle forward. Emily's sobs filled the silence, desperate and broken, while the pristine house felt suffocating, like the walls themselves were complicit. Patricia's eyes darted between the bruise and her son's face. She had prayed she was wrong, prayed the whispers from neighbors and the excuses about accidents were only misunderstandings. But this moment stripped away every doubt. Her clutch slipped from her hand and hit the floor. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone and dialed. Robert's expression crumbled into panic. Don't. Please, Mom. It was just. But Patricia's voice was steady, quiet, unshakable. I won't watch this again. The line clicked. A dispatcher answered. Patricia's breath shook, but her words didn't. I need the police. Now. As Emily's sobs cracked the air, something inside Patricia settled, not relief, not satisfaction, but sheer resolve. She was ending what should have ended years ago. The sirens came faint at first, then louder, circling the neighborhood like a warning bell. Curtains twitched. Neighbors stepped onto porches, whispering and nudging each other. Some clutched their robes tighter, others folded their arms with smug recognition. Secrets had always floated along these manicured streets, and now they were spilling into the open. Inside, the air was electric with fear. Robert paced the room, rubbing his face with both hands, muttering, she called the cops on her own son. Her own blood. His voice cracked, half disbelief, half rage. Emily had crawled to the corner by the bed frame, rocking slightly, clutching her belly, her breath sharp and uneven. Patricia stood in the center of the room, hands clasped tightly in front of her. She didn't move, didn't flinch when the flashing red and blue lights painted the walls. She had waited for this moment her entire life without realizing it, an end, a reckoning, a promise she had sworn to herself she would never run from again. The front door burst open. Heavy boots pounded up the hallway. Police, Voices echoed up the stairs. Robert froze, wide-eyed. "Mom, stop them. Please, just say it's a mistake." But Patricia didn't move. She didn't even blink. 2 male officers and 1 female officer entered, scanning the room. They saw Emily's bruised face, Robert's clenched fists, and Patricia's unyielding stance. The story told itself. Within seconds, Robert's arms were yanked behind his back, metal cuffs snapping shut. He thrashed, shouting, "This is my house. She's lying. Mom, tell them." Patricia closed her eyes briefly, but no words came to defend him. Her silence was her answer. As the officers dragged him out, the neighbors' whispers outside swelled louder. Near the gate, one voice muttered, "Told you something wasn't right." Another replied, sharp as glass, "Money can't hide everything." Whispers from the neighbors cut like knives, seeping into the house. Sierra's soft cry slipped through the air, faint but sharp enough to pierce the silence. Victoria crossed the room slowly and knelt down beside her, laying a gentle hand on her shoulder so she wouldn't startle. "You're safe now," she murmured, her voice trembling. "You'll come with me." Later that same day, while Matthew sat in a cold holding cell, Victoria's determination hardened into something immovable. She picked up the phone and called the best psychologist in Phoenix, the very same woman who had once helped her claw her way out of her own past. "He needs help," she said firmly. "Not excuses. Real help." And for Sierra, Victoria opened the doors of her own home. She arranged doctor visits, made sure meals were ready, and created a space where Sierra could finally breathe without constantly looking over her shoulder. Victoria made it clear to everyone who asked, Sierra wasn't just her daughter-in-law anymore. She was family. That night, the mansion felt transformed. The silence wasn't heavy or suffocating anymore. It was cleansing, like the house itself was exhaling. For the first time in years, Victoria felt like she had finally stepped out of her husband's shadow, broken free from denial about her son, and stepped into a clarity that was fierce and unshakable. She stood at the window, watching the last police car fade into the distance, and whispered to herself, "The cycle ends here." Weeks slid into months. The sharp edge of that day dulled into memory, though the weight of it never truly left. Sierra settled into a quieter wing of Victoria's estate, a place that overlooked the gardens where birdsong replaced shouting. The air carried the soft scent of lavender, and little by little, Sierra's laughter began to sound unforced. Fragile, maybe, but real. Her pregnancy flourished in peace instead of fear. Neighbors who once whispered gossip now came by offering congratulations, some weighed down by guilt over their silence, others eager to rewrite the roles they had played in the story. Sierra learned to hold her head high. At the market one afternoon, 2 women whispered near the produce aisle, "She's the one whose husband got arrested." But another voice quickly cut in, "No, she's the one strong enough to survive it." And Sierra clung to that version of her story. Meanwhile, Matthew sat in sterile rooms, day after day, facing long therapy sessions. At first, he raged, convinced his mother had betrayed him. But week after week, the denial cracked. Piece by piece, he was forced to face the legacy he carried, the shadow of his father, and the truth that his choices were his own. Letters started arriving at Victoria's doorstep, filled with apologies written in the same handwriting that once denied everything. She read them, but tucked them away, waiting to see if his actions would ever match the words. One quiet spring afternoon, Sierra gave birth. Victoria stood at her side, holding her hand as tears streamed down her face when she heard the baby's first cry. The sound was fragile yet powerful, like a promise that cycles could break, that history didn't always have to repeat. Months later, after his release, Matthew stood in the garden. He looked smaller somehow, tentative, humbled. From a distance, he watched his child, unsure if he even had the right to be near. Sierra didn't hand forgiveness over easily. But she let him sit, watch, and slowly begin to rebuild. Victoria stood between them, breathing in air that felt lighter than it ever had. She had broken the silence, chosen truth over comfort, and in doing so, she had changed everything. Abuse survives in the dark, but when someone flips the light on, an entire house begins to change. Sometimes love means protecting the wounded, and sometimes it means holding the people you love most accountable. And in that choice, legacies get rewritten. If this story moved you, don't just scroll past. Stand with the ones who need a voice. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories that reveal hidden struggles and celebrate real courage. And if you believe that cycles of abuse can and must be broken, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Together, we shine light where silence once lived.